welcome to the first ever episode of Commentators Corner. This is the debut of our brand new podcast. I'm Tyler Reedy. To my left virtually is Brendan Preisman. Together, we're the voice of Creighton Prep football and basketball on CPTV. And we're very excited to be bringing you this podcast, making its debut this week just before the season begins. Brendan, how are you doing? Of course, I bet you're excited for the season to begin.
I am very excited for the season to start. You know, we've had a lot of crazy things happen in the world in the past couple of months, but high school football's still going on, albeit with no fans in the stands. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully I'll be watching, whether from the student council watch party or somewhere else, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Only families are going to be allowed. I'm hoping everybody out there is staying safe during this continuous, difficult time, but sports are back. They're ramping up all this week. You got the first football game with Westside on Thursday night. Cross country has their first two meets on Friday and Saturday, and then tennis as well. Thursday, they have a duel with Millard North, and then Saturday, a varsity quadrangular, which means 4 teams are involved on Saturday. So everybody's starting to get going here.
Mm-hmm.
All the sports are back this week.
I will say, though, that this week might not be the best time to start ramping up practices because it has been a hot one.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
100-degree heat. Hey, cross-country team, why don't you run, I don't know, let's go 5 miles. That's doable.
Yeah.
Hey, football practice in full pads in an oven.
Yeah,
How's that?
I can't imagine that.
No.
The football game, too, Thursday night, Creighton Prep, Westside, obviously going to be in the heat. Temperatures are still going to be in the 90s. There's going to be plenty of heat on the field with the intensity that Prep and Westside bring, one of the best rivalries in the entire state. But the last 2 seasons, it's been all Westside. It has been all Westside, as much as it could possibly be. But we'll see what happens Thursday night. Game begins at 7 o'clock at Phelps Field. Student Council is holding a watch party for Creighton Prep. Doors open for that, 6:30. That'll be in the Commons, Sullivan Center. They'll be showing the game on the big screens around the area, and there'll be halftime entertainment. Food will be provided by Chick-fil-A, and then there will be a Blazing Hot Wings challenge with Buffalo Wild Wings for some prep students at halftime. So should be interesting. Should be a fun night.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to say regardless of the score, but, you know, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. And you mentioned, like, the rivalry being all West Side, and that is absolutely true. 2018, I remember freshman year, I got a copy of the Omaha World Herald, and it was just like, high school football preview. Mark your calendars for September 20th, Prep West Side. Biggest rivalry in Omaha. Last year it was a 45-40 Prep win. And then I went to the game. So that was rough. And then 2019, you kind of had the insult added to injury when Westside, instead of doing what most teams do and getting a cupcake opponent for their homecoming week, to make sure that the fans went home happy, they actually went and put Prep at their homecoming. And, you know, at the time, that was like a really dangerous decision because Prep was 4-0, and you were both thinking they were looking very good.
Mm-hmm.
And after 4 second quarter touchdowns, the smoke started to clear, and Westside won 49-21.
Yeah, you began to understand why. And then the playoffs as well. 49-13 in the first round, Westside beating Prep. So ever since that 45-40 Prep win back in 2017, Westside in the last 3 meetings with the Junior Jays has outscored them 135-36. They eliminated Prep in the playoffs for both football and basketball last year. But, you know, week 1, Westside might not be totally refined yet as a team. You know, they could still be trying to put things together. And, you know, of course, anything can happen in week 1 when teams aren't in mid-season form just yet. So we'll see how things go, and we'll see if Prep can contain the Westside rushing attack, which was really a problem in the 2 meetings last year.
Yeah. in the two meetings, both Avante Dickerson, the Minnesota commit, who's blazing fast, and Cole Payton, the now senior quarterback, both of them had rushing touchdowns of over 60 yards against Prep last year.
Yeah, both of those games, it just felt like big play after big play after big play. Prep started off both of those games decently well, I remember. I was at both of those games, but eventually Westside flipped a switch, and it was just game over. They turned on the afterburners and just took off.
It kind of feels like watching the Kevin Durant, Steph Curry Warriors again. I'm not comparing Westside to the actual Warriors in Golden State. They haven't even won a title with this team yet. But they flipped a switch after the first quarter or the second quarter, both times against Prep last year. And you mentioned the 49-13 win. And that one, they didn't get 4 touchdowns in the second quarter, but they did get 4 in the third. It's just – and I don't know whether it's fatigue or just Westside feeling the opponent out, but that seemed to be a common thread with their games. They would just feel you out for a quarter or two, make sure that their offensive scheme was working, and then, bam, they blow the doors wide open.
Yeah, and this year could be even worse. Westside, to start the season, is ranked number 1 in Class A after finishing as runner-up, losing to Bellevue West. They were actually shut out, surprisingly, in the championship game last year against the Bellevue West Thunderbirds. But this year, they're number 1. They still have their star quarterback, dual threat Cole Payton, and then Avante Dickerson at cornerback and running back. Listen to this. He has offers from Akron, Arkansas, Baylor, Indiana, Iowa, Iowa State, LSU, Nebraska, Ohio State, Ole Miss, Penn State, Rutgers, Tennessee, Texas, Texas A&M, USC, and he is going to Minnesota. So he has his entire college career out in front of him, and it's only his senior year of high school, the beginning of it.
Yeah, Minnesota is probably getting a gem, and PGA Fleck's building a really nice program there, but we can talk about that another time. I will say that I was fortunate enough, or perhaps unfortunate enough, to actually play against him in intramural basketball.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there were about 3 separate times where he just broke away for fast break dunks. So, yeah.
Yeah, he did a lot of the same last year on the ground, and, of course, playing lockdown defense at corner, which is his main position. That's what he's being recruited for, but plays running back along with that and does it quite well for Westside. So what can Prep do to win this game? Obviously, they need to stop the run. That's the main concern with the way they ended last season. The run defense was the biggest problem, but they've got some offensive talent, even though they lost last year's starting quarterback, John Caniglio, along with star wide receiver Mason Armstead. But they keep A.J. Rollins, the 2-sport star, basketball and football, at tight end, Alex Bullock at wide receiver, who made some big plays last year. And then Jack Stessman going to be stepping in after he missed the entire season last year with injury at running back after last year's starting running back, Vinny Cacioppo, went down with a dislocated elbow. And then, of course, Pat Foley, the kicker, who made some clutch kicks last year. So Prep still has plenty of talent despite losing a good amount of seniors last season.
I think one of the big issues is going to be staying healthy, especially for the running back core. And you mentioned that Prep lost the starter from last year, John Caniglio. We also lost the backup quarterback, Braden Woodward, who was really good in those QB power style situations. When the offense needed a yard or two, he was the one that they called on to get that yard more often than not. But I think that the offense, especially the passing game, will be the X factor. New quarterback, Sam Meisenberg, he's been with the program all 4 years, and he actually got some game action last year, especially in blowouts, and he performed well. So I think the big issue is going to be the passing offense, because Prep is not going to be able to completely shut down Westside's offense no matter what happens. Westside just has too much talent on that side of the ball to stop. But if you look on defense, obviously they've got Dickerson on that side of the ball. But if you can avoid Dickerson and get the ball to the receivers who he's not covering, then you might have a chance. I think that Prep needs to make this game into a shootout if they're going to win.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was last time the game was in week 1, back in 2017. You mentioned it earlier, Prep beat Westside 45-40 at Westside, so they got the same situation going for them here. And we'll see how it plays out Thursday night. Be sure to RSVP for the watch party event Thursday night. You can do that by heading over to the Creighton Prep Student Council Twitter page. There's a link there to sign up for that. Obviously, can't have full capacity with social distancing measures, trying to keep everybody safe while still cheering on the Jays. But come check it out. Should be a fun event, and we'll see how the game goes.
I will say that we might both be eating our words pretty soon if Prep's offense is as good as we hope it could be, because there is definitely a lot of talent on that side of the ball. And the defense this year, I think the run defense is going to be shored up a little bit because most of the linebacking core is seniors. They were starters last year. They were here. And I think they're going to be pretty good. But we saw that Prep was ranked number 6 in the preseason for Class A by the Omaha World Herald. And we both thought that was crazy. But if Prep plays well against Westside, we might be eating our words pretty soon.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Anything can happen in week 1. So
yeah, and last year they started off hot, 4-0.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They got lucky with a couple of games. A lot of clutch plays needed, but they won them.
Yeah, so you mentioned how last season went, so we'll dive into the season beyond the Westside game. Obviously, Westside, the biggest game on the schedule, arguably, being in week 1. But for the 2020 season, it's really flipped around schedule-wise from what it was last year. In 2019, if you recall, Prep had that 4-0 start, as you said. They played a lot of, pretty good teams, nothing too crazy in the month of September. Then they hit the Westside game, got annihilated there, 49-21, and then had big losses to Millard South and Elkhorn South, and then Westside in the playoffs. But this year, they start with Westside, defending runner-up, number 1 in Class A right now. And then week 3, Bellevue West, defending state champion, a couple other top 20 teams in there as well. And then the last 4 games are against non-top 25 teams. So rather than limping into the playoffs, if they are to get there this year, Prep would hopefully be cruising and stringing together a couple of wins and carrying some momentum.
Mm-hmm. And, yeah, you mentioned the hot start for Prep last year. It was actually 6-1 at one point before they fell to Millard South and Elkhorn South to end their season, and then the loss to Westside in the playoffs. So you could really go both ways with saying Prep's record was misleading last year. You could say, 6-4, well, that's because they played 6 teams, like 4 of which finished under 500. Or you could go the other way and say, well, yeah, they only finished 6-4 because all 4 losses were to like top 5 teams at the time they were playing. So it's going to be interesting. You mentioned a lot of the good teams. Yeah, 4 of Prep's first 5 games against the top 20, 2 of those away games. But after that 5-game stretch, no other team in the regular season schedule finished above 500 last year. So Prep should be able to really get some playing time for a whole bunch of different guys down the stretch. Put in, if the offenses aren't working too well, put in some new ones for the playoffs and use the bad teams as kind of like testing facilities for it.
Yeah, that second half of the season should be interesting. See if Prep can get things going. We'll see how the season starts. The first 3 weeks will most certainly be a test, especially for that run defense. We said it a couple times already. Here's a stat for you. Last year, in the final 3 games of the season against Millard South, Elkhorn South, and then Westside, the playoff game, Prep allowed an average of 354 rushing yards to their opponents. I mean, that's a number that you can't even comprehend for a football game, but the opposing teams just realized, hey, we can just run the ball repeatedly and Prep's not going to be able to stop it. That's exactly what they did, and they had tremendous success running all over the place, winning games in blowout fashion. So that's obviously the first issue to address.
I think we talked about how fatigue could have been a factor against a team like Westside, and maybe with the linebacking core having another year in the weight room and in the offseason to train and develop, that's going to be a little different this year. But I think what's interesting is Westside's schedule, because it's the senior years for both their stars, Peyton and Dickerson, And this might be their best chance to win it because I was looking at their schedule earlier. Obviously, with the cancellation of fall sports by OPS, they've got a couple games missing from there. But of the 6 games that they're still playing, with the main pieces of an offense that averaged over 38 points last year, they've only got 3 teams on their schedule, including Prep, who are in the Omaha World Herald preseason top 10 for Class A. And I think I mentioned this in my preview of the game. It should be out on J Journal sometime, but they have a real shot if they make it all the way to the title game again this year for 11 or 12 wins.
Yeah, they're a dangerous team. There's no doubt about it. And make sure that you check out Brendan's Prizeman Precap. It's a tradition that he had going last season, and it's going to continue into this season, and it'll be even better. And hopefully it'll get more attention with, the Birdcage not being able to attend games. And it's the best precap around. I'll tell you that. Make sure to check it out, jjournal.org.
That could be an interesting effect on the game, too, because the Prep fans and Westside fans, for that matter, are both very enthusiastic, very knowledgeable about football. So that could be interesting to see how it would affect the game. Like on a 3rd down and long play for Prep, you wouldn't hear the loud cheering that you normally would. You might still hear cheering because, as you mentioned, families will be allowed, but it won't be quite as loud as it would be if the fans were allowed. But for the X factor of this game, I think it might be A.J. Rollins. You mentioned him earlier, 2-sport star, being recruited for Division I in football and basketball, which is just incredible. But he started at tight end last year, played well. I think that if Westside can't find a matchup for him because he is a very large human being, then they're going to be in trouble because he is fast. For as large as he is, he can run.
Yeah, he's a freak athlete.
So if he manages to make a couple big plays like Travis Kelce against the Texans last year in the, I believe, division, then Westside's defense could be in trouble.
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier. Prep still has plenty of talent, so we'll see how it pans out in the upcoming rivalry game with Westside and the upcoming season to follow. So that concludes it basically. Just make sure you head over to the watch party Thursday night for the Westside game. Doors open at 6:30 in the Commons, but Prep Sports ramping up this week, and that means that our podcast and our lives, the busyness of them is going to ramp up as well.
Yep.
Doing more games and talking about Prep Sports. So the plan is for this podcast is it's going to be kind of a 2-way thing. Weekdays, or at least in the middle of the week, we're going to have the Prep Sports preview, recapping the last football game, looking ahead to the next one, also talking about the other sports that are happening. And then over the weekends, we'll be talking about Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, and then very soon college football and NFL. So
NFL preview coming. Yeah. All right. One last thing. What's your score prediction for this game?
What's my score prediction?
Yep.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, it can go a lot of ways. It's always hard to tell in week 1, but I hate to say it, but, I think, Prep definitely has some avenues to potentially pull the upset and win this game, but in all likelihood, Westside's talent and run game is just going to be too much. They're going to put up a lot of points, so I think they're going to score at least 30. I know that. But officially, I'm saying 42-20. I think Prep's offense will have a pretty good night, but it's just so difficult to run with Westside running attack. And then even through the air, Cole Payton's a stud going both ways. So it's going to be difficult. I have 42-20 Westside, though.
Okay, yeah. That's about what I have. But if our listeners want to hear my actual or see my actual prediction, they can go on over to the precap, which, as you said, is on the jjournal.org site. That'll get the readership up, hopefully.
Yeah.
You mentioned the offense for Westside. There's just so many good, fast players. It's going to be difficult for Prep to stop them. You did mention an avenue for a Prep win, though. I think that if Prep can get the shootout going, then they've got a chance to win it. And remember, Pat Foley's back. Maybe a 38-35 victory
Yeah,
with
Foley,
a
Foley
kick at the
Molly
go.
part 3.
Yeah,
You think what I'm
you never.
thinking? Be exciting to watch, though. It's always
It
fun
will.
to watch when Prep and Westside meet up in any sport, quite frankly. The rivalry is always there. Even if there aren't fans, the intensity is still going to be there on the field. There's no denying that. But
That's for sure.
yeah. So we'll see how it plays out Thursday night. That basically does it for us. We'll be back over the weekend to talk some pro sports and maybe a college football preview as well. But I don't know if you have anything else more to say. Prep Westside coming up, fall sports getting going this week.
Yeah, just watch the game.
Yeah, it'll be televised. We won't have it on Creighton Prep TV. We're looking at potentially doing the Papio game next week, but as far as the Westside game goes, that'll be on television. Make sure to check it out, of course, or head to the watch party if you're interested. You can RSVP for that by way of the Creighton Prep Student Council Twitter page. And that does it for us. Commentators Corner, episode 1 is in the books. How you feeling?
Feeling good.
Good to hear. Well, we plan on continuing to do this twice weekly thing, podcast. So that's it for now. Episode 1 is done.
Yep.
So for Brendan Preisman.
One last thing.
Oh, what'd you say?
Yeah, one last thing. Watch the game. Keep listening to the podcast. Stay safe out there. Have a good day.
Absolutely. Just taking it one day at a time,
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yep. And that one day, Thursday night, it's going to be a big one. Prep Westside. Check it out for sure. So that'll do it for this week's or today's episode for Commentators Corner. For Brendan Preisman, I am Tyler Reedy. Stay safe out there, everybody, and enjoy your week and enjoy the game on Thursday night. So long for now.